The delegate from Culpeper, Delegate Freitas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for a point of personal privileges.
Delegate has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I had the opportunity to watch the State of the Union address, as I'm sure many people in here did. And I fully understand, having sit through a couple, as everyone here has as well, that you don't always expect a universal round of applause for every applause line. And I certainly don't expect everyone to provide 100% support to our chief executive, whoever it is, and regardless of what party. But I do want to compliment the president on something, because I think there was a common theme within the State of the Union address that we can all be proud of, not as Republicans or Democrats, but as Americans. When he talked about an economy that is finally recovering, not because the government is attempting to micromanage or relentlessly tinker with it, but because we finally removed tax burdens and regulatory burdens, which made it cheaper to do business 8,000 miles away than it did to run and expand businesses right here in the United States. By removing those burdens and putting faith back in the American people, not only are we seeing our own businesses expand, but we're seeing foreign companies that want to expand in the United States as a result, to the benefit not just of those companies, but to their employees, to the consumers, to all Americans. He also expressed a willingness to compromise on an issue which was near and dear to his administration and near and dear during the campaign, and that's on DACA. But what does he require? He requires nothing more than what Republicans required in the 80s when there was an amnesty deal signed at that point, and that is that we have a constitutional obligation to secure our borders. We have an obligation as a nation to protect American citizens, whether they were born here or whether they're immigrants. And while we as the American people can respect the dreams of people no matter where they come, our first obligation and responsibility is to our citizens to protect their liberties so that they can pursue happiness and pursue dreams. He also expressed a desire, I think is very important, with respect to criminal justice reform and how we treat opioid crisis. Instead of putting an emphasis on incarceration, he put an emphasis on treatment, which is something that I think people on both sides of the aisle can get behind and support. When it comes to providing second chances for people, once they have served their time, once they have paid their restitutions for victims, he put an emphasis on the fact that we need to be able to work to reintegrate those people back into society so they can be productive members as well. When it came to national defense, he renewed his commitment to not just protect our veterans when they return and to make sure that they're properly cared for, but to ensure that our fighting men and women receive the best training and best equipment and best support on the planet. And he sent a very strong message to enemies of the United States around the world that they will not be confronted with equivocation, with fear, with compromise. If you are an enemy of the United States and you harbor true hatred for who we are as a people, you are going to be met with resolve and with the understanding that the full force of the United States military is there to protect the interests and the citizens of the United States. But I think the thing that I appreciated most about the State of the Union address is that as he went through each one of these points, he highlighted everyday American citizens, whether they were soldiers, whether they were welders, whether they were teachers, whether they are parents that have been the victims of violence. And he didn't hold them up as a white American or a black American or a brown American or a female American. He held them up as Americans. That was the unifying thread throughout all of this. I don't expect us to agree on everything, but I think he reminded us that we have a lot to be proud of in this country. And if you're wondering why there are so many people that every once in a while when Donald Trump says something that probably make everybody cringe a little bit, if you're wondering why sometimes a pass is given for that, it's because there's absolutely no doubt that this president loves this country and loves its people. And I think as we go forward, Mr. Speaker, and we look for ways to work together, if we can simply remember that common theme throughout the State of the Union address, that ultimately, at the end of the day, the thing that unifies us as a people is based on that understanding that we are a nation that believes in individual liberty, in equality before the law, and the ability to pursue happiness in accordance with your definition of it, provided you don't infringe on the rights of someone else to do the exact same thing. That should be a philosophy that we can all get behind, and I thank the president for articulating it yesterday. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.